Would you please help me welcome the hero for all of us, Colonel Arnald D. Gabriel. Colonel Gabriel.
Thank you.
We're ready.
The American Legion had a fife and drum corps, the Sons of the American Legion. So I played fife when I was 9 and 10 years old. It was the year after I'd heard the opera. And then when I went to junior high, it was natural that I would play flute from fife. So I played both in the band and orchestra in junior high. It was a junior-senior high kind of a thing. And then in 1939, my freshman year, Burton E. Stanley came to conduct the Cortland High School band, and he really changed my life. He was one of those dedicated people who treated everybody. He knew we were dirt poor, and I took private lessons from him and never charged me a nickel. He was that kind of a guy. And I want to skip forward very, very quickly. Recently, I formed and funded a scholarship in his name at Ithaca College and told him what he had done for me personally. He said, "Arnold, I do that for all of my pupils." He was very humble. And he did. But in any event, when I was a senior in 1942, my brother was working in Washington, D.C. at the government printing office. And I had heard the United States Navy Band on tour, and I wanted to play in the Navy Band because those assembly programs, and maybe some of you are old enough to remember, we had to pay 10 cents. And a lot of my colleagues didn't have 10 cents, but my dad loved music enough that he really dug deep to give me 10 cents to hear the United States Navy Band. It's interesting, if I can again turn the pages forward, it really hurt me to have to pay 10 cents and find that some of my colleagues, some of my friends couldn't hear the band because they didn't have 10 cents. And when I came to Washington, D.C., I changed that entire concept, where all of the bands now travel under government auspices and no admission is charged.
That's why we never have to pay.
So there's a lot of poor kids now who can hear bands without having to pay. But anyway, I'm skipping way, way forward.
Just give us a real quick snapshot of the Shirley Temple story, because they really need to hear this.
My daughter was watching Shirley Temple, one of those early movies, and said, "Daddy, is Shirley Temple still alive?" I said, "Yes, she is, and by gosh, you know, I think she'd make a great guest artist," because we had all sorts of country and western people, and that's interesting. We had Statler Brothers and Buck Owens and Gatlin Brothers and Barbara Mandrell, and those are the people that the Supreme Court justices, the congressmen came to hear.
Yeah.
They're country and western fans.
Absolutely.
Incredible. And we had Mr. Rogers and Strom Thurmond, who was in his 90s, had his 30-year-old wife and their baby there. God bless him. How did he do it? Anyways. And Captain Kangaroo, we promoted him to major. Shirley Temple, okay. Shirley Temple so loved the Air Force Band that when she co-hosted the Mike Douglas show, which emanated from Philadelphia, and she did it, I think, 4 or 5 times, she always asked for the Air Force Band to appear. And she did some dramatic readings with us. I Am an American of Carmen Dragon. So we became very, very good friends and had dinner with her in Woodside. And when she was ambassador both to Ghana and Czechoslovakia, then Czechoslovakia, she'd come back to the State Department about twice a year, always picked up the phone, Gabe, come on over for lunch. She was that kind of a person, just a wonderful person. But I think the story you're talking about is she'd had a radical mastectomy. And she was very, very depressed. We were doing a concert in San Francisco on tour, and I called her on the phone, and she didn't answer. Her daughter, Susan, answered the phone. And I said, "Susan, I'd like to invite your mom to come to our concert in San Francisco." And she said, "Colonel, she has not had a guest in 6 months. She's very, very depressed." I said, "Well, why don't we bring the concert to her?" And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I ride the bus with the singing sergeants. We'll just run, and we'll run the bus up the hill. We'll stop about halfway so she doesn't hear the bus, and we'll walk the rest of the way." And she said, "Mom, it's time that you had some guests, and there are some people who want to come and see you." She said, "Well, maybe it's time." So she got all dolled up, and of course she was still in a wheelchair, and we were across the swimming pool, and right across the swimming pool were the French doors to her bedroom. So Susan wheeled her out, and the singing sergeants broke out to "A Pretty Girl Is Like a Melody." I can't tell that story without breaking up, sorry. Because the tears rolling down her cheeks. I mean, you talk about the power of music.
Let's look at the future of bands. If you were a band director today, because a lot of the people that are going to be looking at this DVD are people that are in the profession, what advice do you have about how they can embellish and enrich their own band program?
Well, I think if I had one message in this entire interview with you, and by the way, thank you very much for doing this, it's outreach to the community. And I think sometimes high school bands and university bands tend to play concerts, period. You know, call the mayor and have him read Lincoln Portrait. Have the local church choir come in and do a combined concert, a choral and band together. Invite any celebrity who happens to be in the area. They'd love to work with those kinds of groups. So outreach is very important. And maybe I didn't mention it earlier, but I remember lots of people who said, I used to come to the guest artist series to see the guest. Now I come to hear the Air Force Band.
So you educated them
absolutely
through this.
They didn't care who the guest was. They wanted to hear the Air Force Band.
You developed your audience.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's my message to high schools. Rather than just do a concert alone, reach out to the community, bring in the mayor, bring in the local television people, the radio people to work with a band. And that's sort of a hook, as they say in the industry, but it does get the audience there, and the awareness of the band is much more clear to the community, and then they'll come to hear a band in future.
There's celebrities in every community. Has celebrities and
yeah.
Political leaders.
Absolutely. And radio and television personalities. And they're glad to do it gratis because, you know, even all these guest artists that we had, we never paid them anything. All we paid was expenses, period.
And they kept wanting to come back.
Oh, many, many times because they just love appearing with the band.
Where do you see we could make some improvement in the way things are done today in our band rooms, our band halls? Where would you say, you know, if we could adjust this a little bit this way, we may be taking energy not the right direction here?
You mean just band concert alone?
Well, not even band concerts, rehearsals, the way we recruit kids, retain them, etc.
Well, a lot of it has to do with, as I mentioned earlier, with loving the people that you're working with and making them feel important. I think the era of the tyrannical kind of a conductor is over with because that doesn't work. All you do is drive people away from music. And people like Bert Stanley. And you know what I told him? I said, you made me feel so special what you did for me. And he said, honestly, I do that for all of my pupils. And that's the kind of person he was, working beyond just working with a high school band. He was interested in the people and their welfare after high school and after college. And I think that's very important to keep people in the music program.
Tell us about the Wheaton Municipal Band and the contract they have on you for...
Oh, yeah, and that's a wonderful band, too. Yeah. The first time I conducted them, Bill Ludwig is playing bass drum. So how do you correct Mr. Bass Drum? But, yeah, they're all wonderful players. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I go back about every 2 or 3 years. This past year, we had Alan Mazzuti and John Hagstrom from the Chicago Symphony. About 4 or 5 years, Bruce said, you know, Colonel, you look like you could do a concert when you're 100. And I said, I'm going to. Well, I got back to Washington, D.C., and he sent me a contract. But I signed.
Great. Looking 10 years ahead, where are we going to be with our bands in 10 years?
Oh, you know, bands play better than ever. When I conduct that Air Force Band, I'm right down to the last third clarinet player they can sit in the first chair. The quality of music education is better now than it ever has been because of all of you.
Because of all of you.
So thank you.
Let me share one last statement, and then I'll let you put the capper on this. But this was written by a very good friend of yours, by the way, a trumpet player, an up-and-comer called Doc Severinsen. And this is what Doc Severinsen wrote in Colonel's retirement program. He said, in the years that I've worked with and for Colonel Arnald Gabriel, I have unsuccessfully sought words to convey my impression of this man. Besides being one of the finest musicians in the world today, he brings to the world of music the qualities of integrity and courage that we usually associate with a battlefield hero, which he is. I feel that these qualities add a character to his music that gives it a dimension found only once in a great while on this earth. Colonel, for so many of us, you are our hero, and we know that you're just starting this career. And we want you to get that 100th-year check when you go to Bruce Moss's. Would you like to share any last words as we conclude this incredible time together?
Well, the most important thing in my life is people.
Yes, sir.
And I just love people. I love all of you and what you do. Just continue to do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please help me thank Colonel Arnald D. Gabriel.